already know, Chair Ward had an unexpected scheduling of a refinance for tonight that he couldn't reschedule. So he'll join us and take over as soon as he can. But he asked me to get the meeting going and facilitate until he can join. So to start, we've got approval of minutes. And I have a motion for that on a correction. I don't know if anyone else noticed that on the, so anyway, I'm going to throw my correction out there if someone wants to move to approve with the correction or however you guys want to do it. But we'll need a move to approve in a second, but I'm going to let you know that it said twice monthly meetings was unanimously approved, but that's not actually accurate. 4 people voted for once monthly.
Well, I would second that.
So what would you like to make a motion to make that correction and then approve the minutes with that correction, Marcy?
Yes, because it was not unanimous.
So is that a move to approve from you, Marcy, with that correction? Yes. Okay, and who seconded?
Christine Brinker.
Okay, thanks, Member Brinker.
We're gonna take roll.
Oh, sure. Let's go ahead and back up then, or we'll finish this and then okay, do a roll, just since we have a motion on the table. Did anyone have any discussion on the minutes or any other corrections or anything? Okay, please vote. Raise your hand with the hand tool to, oh wait, Member Morris raised your hand. Was that to discuss the minutes?
No, I just wanted to make public comment whenever the time is right for that.
Okay, give me just a minute.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. So everyone, please put your hands down to start this vote. And then, okay, we're voting to approve the minutes. So please raise your hand if you approve. I don't actually see a raise hand for me, so.
I don't see.
All right, so we've got Member Brinker, Hubka, Kawanabe, Borman, Labe, Adams, and then, sorry, I don't have everyone's names in front of me. So, and Cheryl voting to approve. Marcy already, she made the motion, so she voted for it. And then I guess Morris's public comment. All right, so approval with that correction is completed and passes. So you can all put your hands down and let's go ahead and take a roll. I don't have a list of everyone's names in front of me.
Vice Chair Green, I can do that for you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Chair Ward, we knew he would be late. Vice Chair Green?
Present.
Member Hupka?
Here.
Member Brinker?
Here.
Member Borman?
Here.
Member Lade?
Here.
And we know Member Frazier is not going to be here. Member Kawanabe?
Here.
Member Brown?
Marcy, you must be muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm here.
Member Adams?
Here.
Member Stewart?
Member Stewart? Do you see that's a person is here?
Yes.
Is that Cheryl?
Yes.
Cheryl, are you able to unmute and say that you're present?
Member Stewart?
Looks like she went on mute, but we're still not hearing anything. Why don't you raise your hand? All right, she hears us and raised her hand that she's here.
Actually, I think that's a hand for Christine Brinker.
Well, she put it, Cheryl had her hand up and then put it down.
Okay. Okay, great.
Was that everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Lorraine. All right, recognition. This is the time where we'll have recognition of public comment. It's an opportunity for the public to address the Organized Residential Waste and Recycling Committee. There's an expectation that the presentation will be conducted in a respectful manner. The Organized Residential Waste and Recycling Committee may ask questions for clarification, but there will not be any dialogue. Please limit your presentation to 3 minutes. Currently, we're not able to accommodate public presentations. However, they can be submitted ahead of time for the packet. So that time has passed, and I don't believe we received any public presentations, did we, Lorraine?
We did not.
Thank you. So we know that Amanda Morris would like to address us, so please go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to thank you for being transparent about this issue. Working from home over the last 7 months, I've become more acutely aware of how many trucks are going up and down the streets and our alleys, so both in front and back of my house. And it's just kind of surprising to me, and it's the noise is disruptive when we're having meetings from home, and our alley looks fragile as it is. So I'm really glad that you're bringing up this topic, and if there's a way to reduce the number of trucks going up and down the street and alley all weekdays, that would be wonderful, I think. But I thank you for your transparency. My husband and I attended one of the 3 town halls that were held, and we were invited to join this committee, and we took surveys, and we watched the video about the talking trash, reviewed the information on your website. And I really appreciate these discussions, and you're getting input from the public, the community on this topic, because I think it's very important. If there's any way we can reduce the number of trucks, I'm in full support of that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morris. We appreciate your participation. And is there anyone else from the public that wishes to address? It says I got muted and unmuted. I was asking, is there anyone else from the public that wishes to address the committee? I see one attendee, phone number 720-560-4331. Did you have anything to share? Okay, then it sounds like Ms. Morris was the only one. So we'll close the portion of our meeting that recognizes public comment, unless anyone had any questions or clarification requests for Ms. Morris. All right, the public comment section of the meeting is closed. We're on to new business. Do we have Maria yet? No. Do we know how long till Maria might join us?
She didn't give a time frame. She just said as soon as she was done with her presentation at study council.
Okay. Well, we can start reviewing this. We have the information. So we've got the additional info that was added into our packet on, I mean, the price comparisons between the different levels of services and add-ons we already had, although we haven't totally discussed in detail. Does anyone have any thoughts on that or things we want to talk about?
Yeah, sure, I'll raise my hand.
Go ahead.
Raising hand. I mentioned at the last meeting, that in lieu of the fact that we don't really like the price per unit and the price per household, and that a lot of us don't feel we're getting the best deal out there. I'm wondering if we can move on putting out or ask council to put out a 10-year bid. And you know that once bids go out, they take 30 days. You have to wait 30 days. So we would be in hiatus really until we got pricing back and saw what else they could do for us. Because really my thought is not just getting the price down, but that we could get a lot of the services that we want also rolled in as included, you know. So my thought was kind of, instead of putting more discussion into what we have, we try to find other options out there first and then compare, say, you know, this is a 5-year agreement. So I was thinking a 10-year agreement. Now, 20 years is way too long. And I'm sure everybody would feel not very happy with that. But we could also ask, you can put 2 bids out at once, a 5-year and maybe a 7-year and a 10-year or a 15-year. So I wanted your thoughts on that. And also, and then, yeah, basically we would not really need to meet again until we got that pricing back.
Thank you, Member Hubka. I think your points are totally valid and make a lot of sense. I mean, it seems to me that we could do better both on price and potentially on improved, you know, service levels as well by, you know, pushing further. And I'm definitely interested in if the price could come down, if there was, you know, further pushing on the things that people have brought up that matter. I mean, what does everyone else feel? I mean, are there people who are opposed to trying to get longer term proposals?
I think it makes sense.
Ronnie has his hand up.
Oh yeah, I should be asking for hands, so I'm not used to that. Let's start with Member Kawanabe.
Yeah, sorry I missed the last meeting and maybe this was answered there, but was there the point of contention about the pricing? Was that brought up as far as like why their pricing was so high? Because the disparate or the stretch between the different pricings for those different communities that they provided to us were varied, right? Was that answered at all? Because we could go to them and say, yes, give us a 10-year, but if they know there's only 2 contenders, they'll probably highball us.
Well, see, we'll have more competitors though. See, this went out to all the trash companies, and it's curious that only these 2 responded, and that's probably because they can afford this investment over just a 5-year time period. And I think putting out another bid and seeing if there's any other players out there who would be more willing to put all their assets into Englewood over 10 years might find a better return on investment. And yeah, to answer your question, we did talk about price, but in those answers, there's only some, we can discuss those answers that the vendors gave us if you wanted to, because they're in there. Kind of, sort of, they were vague.
Yeah, that's what I saw, right? Just the vagueness. So just wondering, I just wanted to put that out there. I'm totally for putting this out there if we're going to get additional competition, but I also don't want to be spinning our wheels.
Just to recap, thank you, Member Kawanabe. Just to recap, since Maria's joined us now, hi, Maria. We've approved our minutes with one
Sorry, I'm late.
correction. We did the public comment, and we had Ms. Morris tell us that she's in favor of reducing truck traffic. And then we just started discussing the first thing under new business, and Member Hubka brought up wanting to potentially get another bid for 10 years, as has previously been, initially discussed, and also potentially improve some of the service points that aren't included in the existing RFP. And then I believe you just heard Member Kawanabe, and that's where we're at.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Member Brown?
I have no problem with going for 5, 7, or 10 years as far as looking at the price. But I would ask one thing, is that there not be a stipulation on any of those years where everyone in the city has to opt in. Because I think that should be the citizen's choice, whether they want to opt into this plan or opt out. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Brinker?
We heard from the providers that the reason the prices were higher than the surrounding communities is because it was a very high priority of Inglewood residents that the service be offered in alleys as well as streets, whereas in the other communities like Golden, Lafayette, Arvada, et cetera, it was only the street, and they can use better, more efficient trucks. But we're essentially asking them to go twice as far, once down the street and once down the alley with different trucks. So we heard that that was the reason why their prices were higher than we had expected or hoped based on other surrounding communities. And so maybe if it was a longer contract, maybe it would go down a little. In reality, there's probably only maybe 2 more companies that might possibly bid in. I know that is significant, but based on the current providers, there's only a couple more that might bid if we did that. And my main concern about reissuing the RFP would be the time delay, since the process has already stretched on quite a ways, and I'd be in favor of continuing the process as it goes on. I'm not opposed to 10 years. I just don't like the delay that would incur. And the last point is that I think that within the RFP responses that we got, there are some items that we can discuss or negotiate once we get into the weeds. It still obviously won't get as low as those other communities, but we could potentially get the total price a little lower than it is now.
Makes sense. Thanks, Christine.
Thank you, Member Brinker. Member Borman?
Yeah, I did want to voice that I'm in favor of going, at least looking to see if there are 10-year options or 7-year options. I think that's at least a valid option for us to see what would bring down the price. It did sound like the alleyway and street options were a big driver of our cost, but it's at least based on the survey, the way I remember it was that there was a big push that everybody needed and wanted street and alley pickup. The other thing I wanted to say is a question for Maria is, when we sent out the RFP, did we consider sending it to the city of Denver to see if, I know they have alleys, I know they have street pickup, and I know they also have automated trucks. And I was wondering if that was an option for us, or even something we already looked into and they didn't even address or wouldn't even address with the city of Inglewood.
You mean to provide service to us, Dane, as like a contractor?
Yeah,
Yeah, actually, one of the council members had, and maybe he heard that from a citizen, but they had asked me to follow up. So I called spoke to the head of their solid waste group, Charlotte Pitt, and she said they don't have the capacity to extend it to Englewood.
But they do,
She
they
did the
provide
offer,
their,
but she couldn't do it at this time. I'm sorry, Carson, what?
sorry, they provide their own, they don't use a contractor?
Yeah, so they have their own staff, their own trucks, everything, do their own maintenance on the trucks and oversee the entire program completely in-house.
Okay.
North Glen does that too.
Which?
City of North Glen does
North
that.
Glen.
Yeah, they're much smaller. We had briefly thought about that, but I think the trucks get a tremendous amount of damage, and it is a huge investment to invest in those trucks in order to provide that as an in-house option using our own staff. And so that we decided to go the contracting route instead.
Member, I'm not sure how to say it. Is it Labe?
Yes, that is how to pronounce it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was just wanted to chime in and just say that I feel like it's kind of our due diligence to explore what the 10-year or like a longer contract might mean. Since we have this opportunity to look into these issues and make a recommendation, I feel like it makes sense to really be thorough and see if that would make any difference. And I guess I don't totally know what, I know that our progress has been a little bit slower than we initially anticipated. I guess I don't know, like, is there a hard and fast deadline that we're up against, or like what is the bottom line in terms of time?
I mean, I'm not aware of any actual deadlines. I mean, this is an exploratory thing. There's been dates proposed as to when we might come to a recommendation to give to city council, but, and there's been dates proposed in the request for proposal to the providers. But I mean, there is no requirement that we do this or that the city does this. And I mean, I would argue to err on the side of exactly like Member Labe just said, do our best to do the most due diligence we can to make sure that, on behalf of the citizens that we're representing by doing this, that we come up with the best possible plan for, if the city is even going to move forward with this. I mean, is there anything that I'm missing there, Maria?
Yeah, I was actually going to mention that tonight. So I was rereading the RFP, and those proposals are good for 6 months. So, or 120 days. So technically, if we received them on July 16th, then it would be roughly January 16th that they would be good through. So we would need to either make a decision by that time, or we would just need to extend or ask them if they would be willing to extend those prices and their proposals for another 2 months or something like that. So we would have to take some sort of action, either with the proposers, ask for their buy-in on that, or make a decision and just say we're going to go another route before that time.
Thank you. Member Hubka?
That's pretty typical that most companies will only guarantee their prices for 6 months. But we've been without a trash provider for a long time. My grandparents went to Englewood High School and they didn't have a trash provider. So I don't think we're in any rush. And we could do two things at the same time. We can ask if it's okay to ask this of Maria and the city to put out bids and keep the discussion going about the level of services we're looking at, what we really want to see in one contract, and what we think citizens are willing to pay. So would we move on something like this? Would we all vote on it?
I mean, you can present a motion that, but I would suggest let's put that towards a little bit later, because I think it's worth discussing what we have planned on the agenda before potentially, you know, pushing this way out and requiring a new RFP. At least that. But if you want to make that motion now, that we potentially halt what we're doing until we, you know, do a new RFP for a longer period of time, I mean, you could make that motion, someone could second it, we could vote if we want to do that. It's up to you.
Well, I don't want to press anybody tonight. I don't want anyone to think about it, but I certainly don't think it's a big commitment just to say, hey, while we're talking about this, let's put out or ask council to please put out a bid for one for 7 years and one for 10 years. What can I make a motion that we ask that? Or we
Go ahead.
Okay, I make a motion. Will anybody second my motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Matt.
And who is that?
Matt Adams.
Thank you. All right. So can you just state your motion real clearly, Member Hubka?
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Of course.
Would we be able to continue our discussions in the meantime, or is the motion to halt while we're waiting for new responses?
Oh, we're going to keep talking. We're going to keep moving forward. We just go ahead and not waste any time. Just go ahead and get that pricing started for, they have 30 days to respond, right, Maria and Lorraine?
Yes, well, we gave them 5 weeks, I think, just because it was, you know, it's fairly significant response needed. But I think the other key factor before we move forward is, do you want to change anything else?
That's what I was going to say, is I would think that there's several points that we have up for discussion.
Yeah.
That, I mean, there's even some things we don't have answers on yet, but that we may want to include in whatever, you know, updated request we make to the, you know, the respondees at this point. So I think what you're asking for makes perfect sense, but maybe we piggyback that on as included with whatever other requests we make of them.
Okay, excellent. Just make a note of all this, and then we, that would be great. Great idea.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Maria.
Excuse me, Vice Chair, sorry to interrupt. I can't find where I put my hand up for some reason. But so I think I will have to ask the city attorney too. We may need to reject the proposals before we can issue new ones. That may be the case.
Oh.
So because we have to act in good faith. And so we're trying to get new bids now or new proposals from folks. And we couldn't, I guess it wouldn't be fair to weigh those against the old ones. So we would say, okay, we're not comfortable with this process. We have to end it, and we're going to go this new route now. I believe that may be the answer, but I'll verify that.
And
but
is that because, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, is that because if we change, you know, effectively what the RFP is for, then it needs to go back out in case that change might have you know, somebody else might have responded as well.
Exactly. And so, you know, I think while we could potentially negotiate smaller items, not necessarily cost or time periods, but obviously if you're going to go for a longer time period, say 7 or 10 years, I think the goal with going out for another proposal would be that we get better prices, hopefully, because to Brenda's point, we're spreading those costs over a longer period, but then also the hope would be we'd have more interest potentially from other folks too, other providers. That would be the goals of going out again with new proposals.
Okay, since we have the motion and it's been seconded, and what I would like to just potentially, and Member Hubka and Member Adams, I'm going to try to frame it in something that we can build on. And then you guys, if you disagree with the way I frame it, then let me know. But basically the motion is that we're going to consider pushing back whether it ends up, based on what the city attorney says, whether that ends up potentially having to be that we reject the existing bids and do a new RFP, or if we can potentially just within what the ones we've already got going, request this as a change. And this will be a building list of changes if possible, starting with the length of time, and then there may be other specifics that we add into what we'd like to, make this either changed request or new request to be. Does that work for you guys?
Yes, does that mean you table the motion?
I was going to have us vote on it, and I was just kind of framing it in that term.
Okay,
Unless we want to do it different. I mean, that's my interpretation.
no, that's fine. That's a good suggestion. And what else? I was gonna, spin off that agenda and say, what I think we'd all like included is the yard waste. But see, I think that what we're gonna see, this is my prediction. I don't know for sure, but in a 7 or 10 year contract, they'll probably throw that in for free, or that's a good time to ask for that for free. You see what I'm getting with? But that 10.
Yeah, and that's what I meant is I think there's several details to be potentially added that some of which we've discussed high level and some we've already gone into more detail on. And remember, Brinker, your hand went up and down. Did you have something to add?
No, never mind.
Okay. All right. So basically what unless, I mean, I kind of just laid it out, but I'll try again to make it a little more succinct. The motion is that instead of just looking at the responses we currently have that are based on the original RFP of 5 years, we want to find out if we can get a better deal over 7 or 10 years, as well as potentially have additional details included, possibly yard waste, possibly better customer service structure, things like that. And there's a motion that we take that into account. We don't know exactly what it means until we hear from the city attorney. We're going to continue to have our discussion about all of our details, which we have to have anyway, so we know what this new format might be. And unless member Hubka or the seconder member Adams disagree with that characterization, then let's vote. Okay, so what you're raising your hand for is we're going to require that we have additional length of times considered before we are making our final consideration, including we're going to push for additional details along with that to be determined. So please raise your hand to vote for that. Okay, that's unanimous because I don't have a way to raise my hand as co-host, I guess, but my hand is raised. So everyone voted in favor of that. Everyone voted in favor of that. So now what I would suggest is we continue with our new business. And now that Maria's here, do you want to give us like a kind of an intro to what the program overview document you included is and walk us through that?
Sure. I'm going to pull that PowerPoint and just walk through that.
Thank you. Member Kawanabe, did you have something to say right now? Or you just didn't?
Apologies.
Oh, no problem.
Vice Chair Green, while we're waiting for Maria, Member Stewart said she was having issues with her sound. I'm not sure if she can speak yet. I did advise her to perhaps dial out, dial back in, but I see her hand is raised.
Okay. Member Stewart, are you able to speak now?
If you try the, on the mute button, there's a little arrow there, Cheryl, next to the mute on the very lower left. And that's where you can select a microphone. And you might want to try selecting one of the other microphone selections. See if that works.
We're still not hearing you if you are speaking.
Cheryl's not the call-in, is she?
No, she's listed. Unless there's another call-in. The person who's called in has their hand raised right now, 4331.
And that is Member Stewart.
That is?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a way for her to speak through that, or?
She's under attendee, not panelist. Can she be moved to panelist?
I don't appear to have control for that.
Yeah, she was moved to panelist. That's why you do see her name showing up on the screen as well.
Okay. We still see that phone number under attendees too.
Mm-hmm.
And she's showing as unmuted. Sorry, Member Stewart, but we still don't hear you. At least we know that you hear us and that you're able to raise your hand, but it would certainly be better if you could participate.
Is there a problem with calling in and having computer audio? Because it looks like she has both right now, right?
That's what I'm seeing.
Maybe she could hang up one or the other.
Well, if she killed the computer, she wouldn't be able to vote or raise her hand, which is.
Yeah, I think as long as we know she's there and we're accounting for her, I think that's fine. I've seen other people do that.
Member Stewart, if you, it's going to be tough for me to monitor it, but if maybe between Lorraine, Maria, and I were able to monitor email, if you've got something to add or let us know that you want to address, send us an email. Okay, when you're ready, Maria.
All right, thank you, everybody. Yeah, so feel free to interrupt me. So this is intended to just be a general overview. And then you can ask either questions during or at the end. And then the next section that we'll go over is the fees, which is a separate presentation. So this was intended just to give you an idea of what was really in the proposals. And I think it's important based on the previous discussion, as we talked about, are there elements here that you'll see that we might want to change if we issue a new RFP? Okay. All right. So just as an overview, where did this start from? It really started as an idea by the ETAC group, Englewood Transportation Advisory Committee, but I understand from them that they had talked about it over the years, as well as some other advisory committees to the city council as well. So when I first started, we support the ETAC group as well in public works, and that's where it came up. And so that's where it had also started. And then in talking to other staff members, we identified that as an issue for KEB, Keep Englewood Beautiful, as well as the Budget Advisory Committee. And then CASE, which Jeff sits on, the Citizens for the Advancement of a Sustainable Englewood. That's not an official city group, but it is an Englewood group. We're also interested in this idea and had brought that forward to the city. So based on that, we met, kind of brought this idea back to City Council in April of 2019, and the City Council directed staff for us to begin that evaluation process. And that's what led to the public meetings, the survey, everything else that we've done over the last, the summer and fall of 2019, leading up to the RFP issuance in, I believe it was June of this year. So really the goal of the overall program is that we would provide services to effectively collect and dispose of solid waste, as well as try and recover the fullest amount of recyclable materials as possible so that we have the least impact on the environment and do that in a cost-effective manner, so as to enhance the safety and aesthetics of the city. Overall, the objectives are to minimize the rate of waste generation, increase the amount of materials being recycled, provide that consistent, reliable collection services, provide professional and prompt customer service, hopefully overall financial savings to residents, as well as allowing for the collection of large and bulky items, which often, as people will tell you, is difficult. And then reducing the number of collection vehicles on city streets and in the alleys. So the way that we kind of put that RFP together was based on that citizen poll where we had more than 740 responses.
Maria,
Mhm.
could I just interrupt you a minute?
Sure.
Where did those 740 responses come from? Was that at the trash meetings?
No, we put it, we advertised it there, but it was also on the city website, and I know they sent out some social media posts to say, hey, take this survey from the communications department. So I think that first meeting we had, I bet we had over 200 some people, and the next ones we had probably between at least 125 and 150, but it was more than just the people who took the poll at the meeting.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And we did check the email addresses, not the address of the person, because we don't know that, but the email addresses were all unique. So we do know that.
You know, Maria, I'm not trying to be combative here, but I was at the third meeting,
Mhm.
and there was maybe like 30 people there or 35 people there.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure that that's factual where it says 3 public meetings attended by more than 150 people at each event, because there was hardly anyone there at the third event.
Oh, I thought there were quite a few. So
No. I know
yeah,
there
I
was
was
one at the first and second meeting, but that third meeting, there was hardly anyone there.
I attended the third meeting, and I would say there were at least close to 100 people. There was quite a bit, and I was there the whole time.
Third meeting?
Yeah, that's the
last
one that I
meeting?
went to.
I know
Okay.
Lorraine bought pizza each time. So
Yeah,
she
she did.
she probably have a
And it
better
was
idea of
good.
how many pizzas we went through.
Okay.
Yep. So I can do that down to 100 people at each event, but I know they were
No,
well.
that's okay, Maria. I mean, I just, there was just so many empty chairs, because if you remember at the third meeting, you had chairs set to one side and chairs set to the other side. It was not like, you know, the other meetings where all the chairs were packed in. So that's all. It's fine. It's
Okay.
fine.
So I'll just buzz through some of this. So we did then after that have some citizens who had served as representatives on those various boards and commissions. They gave us input. That's where we got we absolutely have to go up the street and down the streets and the alleys feedback. I think from the public meetings, we got the that we need an opt-out option. So we gathered that information from a variety of sources. I did.
Yeah, I'm sorry to
Go
interrupt.
ahead.
I have one question about the alleys and streets. Obviously not every street has an alley, but do we know that people who have an alley want the street option? Is it possible that it's people with alleys want alley and people with streets don't have a choice? So, they don't have an alley. Like, do we really need trash to go down streets and alleys, or just alleys where there's alleys and streets when there is no alley? Do we know that people with an alley want street access, or that that's a common need?
There was a few comments made from people about they just physically either can't access their alley or vice versa, they can't access their street. But I would say, to your point, I think we could get away with doing that with maybe a few exceptions. So I think it was more when we were talking with that small group, it was really the idea of convenience. But as we've seen from the prices, we're going to pay for that convenience. So I think, to your point, we could possibly maybe make it one of the alternatives is, if you're on an alley, you have to pick up in the alley. The majority of the responses related to alleys was their alley, or excuse me, their garage faces the alley. They access the alley, and therefore they don't want to drag it to the front, even though they maybe could. They really, and because we were hearing that some of the companies, were discontinuing alley service, they really wanted to make that a continued option.
That's been my impression. And I wonder if, I mean, that is something I think we should all, consider as a possibility, because if there's very few people who have an alley but want street access, that could make a huge difference in the cost. That's something that we should all take into account.
Yep.
I agree that
wanna
that could be a good compromise for us to consider, especially since at least the two providers that responded said that they can do pickup for households that are physically disabled or elderly at no additional cost.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. We could ask for separate pricing in the RFP. One pricing for both and one pricing for just the front. Is that what you're getting at, or?
That's
Are
what
you
I'm
getting at-
thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. Good
No,
idea.
not just the front.
No,
Just-
yeah, right. I'm sorry. Member Hubka, there definitely, I don't think we're going to have citywide support if we don't require that they provide alley where there are alleys. I think that's going to be problematic. What I'm suggesting is when there's an
Right.
alley, the pickup
got
is
it.
on the alley, and when there's no alley, it's on the street. And as a possible option. So to me, the options would be both alley and street everywhere, and you pick, which is what's currently proposed, or alley if you have an alley, street if you don't, but not both.
Copy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just you might want to just try to get separate pricing, is all I'm saying. Either way.
I agree.
Yep. I've got that. That's good.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions at this point? Okay, I'm going to continue. So we did review the RFPs that had previously been prepared by the cities of Lakewood, Fountain, Commerce City, Golden. I think I looked at Arvada's too when it was still in draft. And I took pieces of that as were appropriate to work into ours. We also talked with representatives from a number of communities. And then I also talked with Denver about that idea, maybe to have them serve us as a customer, which they weren't open to at this point. And then I did meet with, I had sent letters out to all of the waste haulers in the Denver metro area and just offered a meeting with them before the RFP went out to get their thoughts. And I did meet with 3 different firms. Waste Management, Republic were 2 of those, and then Waste Connections also took me up on that offer.
Do we know why Waste Connections did not submit?
I haven't called them yet. I plan to, but I wanted to do it after we kind of got through our process. But yeah, they had expressed interest at least to come and, spend time with me, a good hour talking about things.
Thank you.
I don't know the specifics of why they didn't.
If we are reissuing the RFP, could we reach out more proactively?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And who else is licensed in Inglewood? Alpine, are they?
I had sent the letter to Alpine, and I think Lee's or Lies was still in business at that point, or at least they still had a website. So I sent it to them. I think it was
Well, Lee's got bought by American Disposal, and then they got bought by Waste Connections.
Okay, I'll look up the exact list. There was that Canada-based company. Now I can't think of the initials. It's not GHG, but something like that. I'll provide the list of who we sent that to.
Okay, thank you.
They still had a website. We sent them a letter.
Can I also ask if Waste Services is licensed to provide in Inglewood? I know that they use Waste Management, so it's kind of confusing their relationship there, but would they be a possible respondent, and are they technically licensed to serve in Inglewood?
I did reach out after you sent that question in to our business tax group, and they said that they're doing business under Waste Management's license. So, and that was okay with the business tax group. So they're not separately licensed, but they're doing business under Waste Management's umbrella.
But to member Brinker's point, I mean, since Waste Services is offering waste management services cheaper than Waste Management, is it possible to get Waste Services to respond to the RFP?
Well, but it sounds like they're one company. But I mean, I can certainly ask about that. But it sounds like they're one and the same. I don't know.
One's a lot cheaper than the other, though.
One in the same company, but yeah, I can certainly follow up on that and see what the story is. Because yeah, I don't know if they're a separate company or how that all hangs together.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, I just got another postcard from Waste Services today that says, again, $16 a month.
Yeah, they're still actively
Promised for
pushing
2
that
years.
promotion.
Yeah, yeah. So just to let you know that
Yeah,
they're
I
still
don't know
out
how.
there pushing.
Yep, that's good.
Okay.
Oh, are there more questions?
Member Borman, go ahead.
I was just going to make a comment that we still have not been offered that card, at least in our neighborhood.
Interesting.
For Waste Services, and I'm not sure if they're just not servicing our part of Inglewood or what, but I keep looking for it because I want, sort of interested anyway.
Member Borman, I think their website, you can put your address in. I would suggest you go on their site and see if they do offer it. I've had door hangers 3 times from them, and I got the mailer. I'm curious if there really is a difference between portions of Inglewood for them.
Thank you.
Member Brinker?
I would be a little skeptical about using them as our benchmark or our price to beat until we find out why their prices are lower and what they cut to get prices lower, especially is there any effect on customer service or communications or some of those elements that are important to the citizens. And maybe it's fine. I just would want to explore that a little bit.
Sure. Go ahead, Maria.
All right, so you can see here how we got to the number of households to put in the RFP. So we did decide on singles, duplexes, and triplexes, knowing that they could still be served by a single garbage can. So at the triplex, you would have 3 garbage cans and 3 recycling bins. And you can see there with the math how we got to about 9,600 accounts, if you will. So the base program includes weekly garbage collection and disposal, bi-weekly recycling collection and processing, providing those uniform containers for both garbage and recycling. The city would do the billing using our current utility billing process to each household. Collection would be in both the alleys and the streets at the discretion of the property owner. Then there would be 2 large item bulky waste pickup events per year at no additional cost to the household. So that's wrapped into the cost that we would pay to the contractor. So both of them were proposing, if you read the RFP, I proposed that they drive the alleys and or the streets and pick stuff up from the curb or from the alley. They are both proposing instead that these be neighborhood drop-off locations. So let's say in a park, and everybody within a certain radius would have to come bring their items to the park in order to dispose of them. I have a little bit of a heartache with that because the intent of picking up at the site was that neighbors could get out. Let's say there's an elderly person, they could go over, help them get something out to the curb or to the alley. But a lot of people don't have a pickup truck or the type of vehicle to get things from their home even to the drop-off location. So either they didn't read that right or they thought it was going to be too expensive. But I think that really should be our choice to say, oh, we're either willing to accept that price or we're not. So that was a bit disheartening that they went that route. But I wanted to point that out to you all.
Yeah, I noticed that and agree. I mean, to me, it's ridiculous that you'd have to, I mean, the whole point of large item is that you can't move it or get it somewhere.
And to make it as convenient as possible so that we keep Englewood beautiful, we make it as convenient as possible for the homeowner. Where I think a neighbor would come by and help their elderly neighbor, you know, could they help them to the point where they're getting it to the park as well? Was there a question? I'm sorry.
Question, yeah, if we're thinking about reissuing an RFP, is it possible to structure the RFP in a way that they would offer a menu of options where it's not just take it or leave it, but we could go through line item by line item and say this would work or this isn't, and what would be the effect on the price if we don't do large item pickup, etc. Is that feasible?
Well, that's what I did, or that's what I thought I
Okay.
did.
Okay, I was just
The
making
intent
sure.
was that base program was supposed to be in the alleys, and then they could provide alternatives. So essentially what they did was they didn't provide us a price for picking up in the alley and at the curb. So I think what I would change is, you know, that, well, I don't guess I can't force them to give us a price, but I think, you know, looking strongly at it or emphasizing that somehow that we do want a price to evaluate that, because it's just like another pickup, you know, to me.
Yeah. And something
Yeah,
like this seems like maybe a good thing for our conversation directly with them too. But the points where they kind of ignored what the RFP said and we have questions, I mean, when we directly question them, that'd be a good, you know, probably the best venue to get a real response.
Yeah.
Even if they say, well, we'll have to look into it and get back to you, at least it puts it on them to do so.
When I was looking through the numbers, it looked like it was an extra 50 cents a month, give or take, to have those roll-off events. And otherwise, if you didn't want to hold your stuff for up to half a year and then have one of those roll-off events, it would be either $40 or $25, if I remember right, for them to come directly to get it. So they still have an option for how you can get rid of your large items. It's just you'd have to pay for it rather than everyone paying for it a little at a time.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it'd be interesting just to explore both items and look deeper if it turns out that we need to be trying to price cut. I mean, we're trading off in this whole process amenities and wish lists versus prices.
Yep.
Member Hubka?
Yeah, just let me add that don't forget that people will drop off couches and mattresses on other people's property and in alleys. And I don't think we want to stick the homeowner with that and cause a lot of soreness with our committee.
Yeah,
So
and
it's good for thought.
That's one of the issues we're dealing with right now. So when we have that situation, let's say a mattress gets dumped in an alley, there's no identifying information on it. It becomes, because it's in the public right of way, then the Public Works Department goes out and picks it up, and then we dispose of it. And ultimately it's your taxes that are paying for that, of course. The large item pickup was intended to help people get rid of that without dumping it in other areas of town.
Right, disincentivize it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and if that is included where everybody pays a little each month for that benefit, then we'd want to put that heavily in all the education that goes out about this program, because some people will only see the bottom price per month and compare it to waste services and say, now I'm paying more, without doing the calculation to say my tax dollars are lower for code enforcement, not picking up couches, and for wear and tear on the roads, etc.
Member Kawanabe?
Yeah, and I would just suggest structuring the RFP where we have a required section, and that would be included in the required section, versus giving them the option for wiggle room on everything to provide creative ideas. And that way we can get that baseline. Just a suggestion.
Sure.
Good one.
Okay. I'll keep going. So penalties for substandard performance. So we included that, the penalties were called out in the contract. So I think one of the questions you guys had as a group was, should those go back in some cases to the homeowners versus the city? And we can talk about that later, but those penalties were an element of the base program. Yearly price increases was also included in there, and that's fairly standard, and or at least for our types of proposals. I don't know if Brenda, you would say the same, but the RFP allowed for an annual increase to the rates at either 3% of the consumer price index for our general area, or so either 3% or the consumer price index, whichever is less. So here again, Republic stated that they want 4% because that's what they feel they want, or at least to negotiate this with the city. We just went through another contract with a totally different vendor. And so I looked up the CPI for the Denver, Boulder, Greeley area for 2019, and it was at 3.1%. So in that case, we reverted back to the 3% because it was the lesser of the two. But typically that CPI hovers right around that 3% range.
Member Brinker?
I really like this idea, and I wanted to ask Maria, what was your off-the-cuff opinion on the provider's proposal to use, it was some specific price index tied to waste hauling rather than the CPI?
Yeah, I mean, again, I was pretty frustrated because I think, we set the terms. So I think it's fair for the consumer price index for our area here locally, represents the Denver Metro for all industries, not just waste services. So that particular index takes into account the rest of the country. And I just don't think that that's as fair of a index or comparison as what we would get from the CPI for the Denver, Boulder, Greeley area. So again, they're kind of making up their own rules, which is, frustrating.
Maria, based on how you came up with this, would you expect there'd be a difference for a longer term contract, or are we thinking that it would still be potentially increasing 3% every year for 10 years if we were to go that route?
That's a good question. I would say that this is intended to, be fair to the contractor, that an increase is warranted, and that the CPI prevents or gives us some risk relief because it might not go up 3% every year. And so especially like I would say this year, what are the impacts to the consumer price index based on COVID? I couldn't tell you, but
probably more trash. More people are home more. Remember,
maybe people are still buying the same amount. I don't know, but I think in a longer term contract, regardless, and Brenda, you might have some thoughts on this too, but I think the risk element gets greater and greater from a cost perspective the more years you have. And so they're going to be more conscious about how much they can raise their rates and kind of buffer that at the start in order to make sure that they're not going to lose 10 years from now. But any other thoughts, Brenda?
Well, I think he had his hand up.
Yeah, remember Kawanabe had his hand up.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I would just say add this in the 3% into something that we stipulate, and so it wouldn't be up for argument and or proposal. It would be, this is the 3%, or at the discretion of the city, right, to make those adjustments. The other point I would want to make for the penalties and substandard performance, I would say that does not go back to the homeowner. I would argue that we could probably use those funds to help fund those that need it more, right? So if we had a program that required assistance, that would be funded from there.
Good idea.
Member Hubka?
I was just going to say that's a very good idea. And also with the CPI, it is difficult because they use fuel, for their business. It'd be nice if we could get electric vehicles, but that's a pretty big wish list up there. That's all I wanted to add, is that it is a tricky business with the cost of fuel. So that's all.
Member Borman, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I was behind that idea of utilizing the penalties for helping people who need to subsidize their cost of their, maybe getting the trash to the curb or something like that. I think that's awesome. I think it's a great idea for our neighborhood.
Feel free to continue, Maria.
Okay, thank you. So then the program opt-out, again, there's very strong feedback on this from the community, both in the survey and then at the public meetings, so that people just didn't want to be forced into using the system. And so I did include that provision in there to allow households to opt out, and what they would have to do in order to meet the municipal code as it's written now is that everybody has to have garbage service. So they would have to come in or provide us in some way written documentation, like say an invoice from another provider that they have that alternate service. Republic would require their base fee of $15.80 though be charged even to those who opt out. And so you had seen in their response to the written questions why they were doing that. So not sure how you guys feel about that response, but basically that would mean, that their argument was that they still incur the same costs regardless of how many opt out or opt in. And so while I was thinking that we'd still have the administrative fee of $2 be appropriated to those folks, Republic would even require their base fee. And I think, again, that's just kind of a no-go. I can't imagine or would we have to cover that in some way through the city or through other charges in order to overcome that?
Member Brinker.
That's absolutely a no-go. That's ridiculous.
Member Kawanabe.
Do we have any estimates on what percentage of the folks this would be affect?
I estimated at 2.5%, which I think ends up being about 250 to 300 people. But it's truly just a guess because, of course, if you look at that process, while people talk about that, and I think it would depend too on what the cost is, but those people who are adamant and stand on principle, it's probably in that 100 to 200 household range, I would guess.
And
but I can't make any guarantees to the providers of what that number might end up being.
Sure. One thought I have on that, and this is an argument for not charging citizens for any opt-out fee, is the reality is if we move forward with this and there's a single provider for the whole city and some few people want to opt out, the chances of them finding service for any remotely reasonable price is probably nil. And that's why I feel like it's a worthless effort to charge an opt-out fee, because it's just not ultimately really going to happen. And by having that in the beginning, it's going to cause people to push back about it and have issue with it. And it's really going to end up not being an issue. If this ever happens, if we end up with a single hauler, no one's going to be able to afford to hire a trash company to come pick up their one house within some multi-block range that chose to opt out. Member Hubka?
I think if this contract isn't price competitive with everybody else, we're doing this for nothing. If they are allowed to opt out for free, then they're going to go with the cheapest company, and it may end up that Republic is serving everybody anyway because they undercut this contract. Very easy to do. That's why it's very important to get this price point down, because we want people to be in this program so that we decrease all the trucks. So that's I don't think the opt-out fee is, I agree, it's not negotiable. We can't have an opt-out fee, and what we have to do is make this, though, as cheaper than anybody else that's already out there right now.
Yeah, and equal to better service.
I agree. I'm sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand. All of that went out the window, Maria, when you put your screen up. So
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm not trying to be rude. I just don't have my icon up anymore to raise my hand. But I agree with what everyone has said about this program opt-out fee. I don't think it's going to go over well. So just wanted to chime in, and sorry not to be rude. I just don't know
No,
how
that's
to raise
fine,
my
Member
hand
Brown.
anymore.
Yeah, if you can't raise your hand, go ahead and speak up. Member Brinker?
Okay.
We've established that 15 something dollars opt-out fee is absolutely ridiculous and absolutely a no-go, but I don't know that we've established that zero opt-out fee is the way to go either. And it might take more discussion, because the people that opt out, we're still getting the benefit. They're still getting the benefit of less wear and tear on the roads, which leads to lower taxes for everyone, them included. And we're still getting the benefit of clean air, which ultimately leads to lower healthcare bills for everyone, especially seniors. And they're still getting the benefit of safer roads because they have less trucks on them. And hopefully they do care about protecting people, especially kids, from injury. And they're paying for less noisy trucks on the road. And with many more people, like Ms. Morris said earlier, working from home, they'll definitely appreciate that. And they're paying for perhaps the ability to participate in large item roll-offs events. I'm not sure, but so they are getting a lot of benefits. So I wouldn't necessarily say the opt-out fee would be zero. It's clear it won't be 15. Maybe we should discuss what something reasonable would be, and then also see if there could be some exemptions in that for low-income families and seniors that are on a fixed income.
Member Quantaby?
Yep. Just calling out that a lot of people are saying I agree, but there's varying different opinions on that same issue. So I'm in agreement with Christine as well, that that should be fleshed out, because I believe that there should be an opt-out fee to that point, versus other folks that are agreeing with something that I'm not hearing, saying that there shouldn't be an opt-out fee. So just wanted to call that out as well.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Are you
You're fine.
speaking about an opt-out fee every month, or just one opt-out fee? You know,
Oh, I think it should be established. So the other thing that I would be concerned about, if somebody that did fraudulently propose something that they put in an invoice and got the one-time opt-out fee, and then just started dumping their stuff in their neighbor's yard, right? So it's just one thing that I want to consider.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good thoughts. William, I would keep going, Maria. Those are good points.
Okay. We talked about opt-out. So we proposed two options for them to bid on, plus some alternatives. So the first option was pay as you throw. This is a term within the garbage industry. So basically it's the larger garbage container you have and that you can fill up each week, you pay more. So there were three different sizes, being 32 gallons, 62 gallons, and 96 gallons. And then one size, 96 gallons for the recycling container. Then, and the idea was with option one is that obviously you'd have lower costs for the smaller container, and then that would go up with the larger containers because you're disposing of more trash each week. Then the option two, which is just a uniform container, 196 gallon for the garbage, 196 gallon for the recycling. It's just easier to administer, easier to roll out to the neighborhood, and basically makes it just simpler from a logistics standpoint. And we were interested in what that cost differential might be. the additional services, which would be provided at an extra cost, was year-round composting. And that would be every week that you could put out in a container provided by the contractor any compost materials, and those would be collected on a weekly basis and disposed of at a licensed facility. Then we wanted to look at summer and fall yard waste collection. I believe I had from, I want to say May 1st through November 1st. Again, every single week at an extra cost, but you'd have to supply your own compostable containers or a reusable container of some sort. Let's say a bin or a trash can that they would then empty into the back of the truck and then put down next to your garage again. The materials would have to be not brought to a landfill, but brought to a licensed facility, just like the composting. So you want to make sure what that end site is where those would be delivered. Then we also asked them to provide a cost for a drop-off recycling center that would be provided at the service center. This was an idea that had been raised at one of the public meetings as being much more cost effective. So we could set it up at the service center, which is located down on right off of on the west side of Santa Fe, just north of Dartmouth. That's where our public works staff and utility staff is housed out of. It would be staffed by the contractor, and basically you'd have to bring your recycling materials to that site. We wouldn't pick them up at your home, and then they would take them from there and bring them to a MRF, a materials recycling facility of some sort. So we anticipated then that we'd get a credit for that because we would not be picking up recycling materials at our homes. Republic again didn't propose on that. Waste Services did provide a price, but I don't think it was very cost effective. Instead of just, and again, it's from a logistics standpoint as a homeowner, do you really want to do that and bring all your materials to a site every Saturday or something, or every other Saturday, instead of just having it conveniently at your home?
Member Brinker?
Thanks. A couple suggestions for our next round then. For composting, one idea that was discussed was making that bi-weekly instead of weekly as a way to reduce the cost. But we might also put on a future agenda item to discuss whether composting should be left out of this round and do it in a future RFP or a future program or something, which I'd be incredibly reluctant to do, but we got a sampling of what the prices are going to do, and we know that there's no way that that's going to fly. And then separately, I heard a presentation this week from a company that will come pick up your compost from your doorstep in Inglewood and all over the metro area for $22 a month, which is right in between what the other providers offer, but they have no minimum, not 300, not whatever it was, 2,500. So it doesn't seem like that's gonna be feasible for us to make work, but that bothers me to say that. So I don't know that I'm advocating to get rid of it, but it is something to consider. And then lastly, before I put my hand down, perhaps we could also take off the recycling center option, since that would definitely reduce recycling rates, and that was one of our main goals, was to increase recycling rates. So maybe we just leave that off completely. Thanks.
Member Foreman? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Maria.
Could I just clarify with Christine? So Christine, were you suggesting that, I agree with the recycling facility, but for composting is to make that not an extra cost, but just have it part of our base program? Because I think maybe the cost would go down if everybody was required to do it. I think that's the way they do it in Lafayette.
I wish, and it might be a subject for a deeper discussion, but what I was suggesting was that we not do compost at all in this RFP.
Okay.
I'm not saying I'm advocating for that yet. I'm just saying it's something to consider and discuss with the group.
Member Borman?
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking about, if they were talking about maybe a drop-off recycling facility, what if we could talk to them about doing a drop-off compost and yard waste facility instead? Just as a way to cut down on costs, but still have those services offered.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then maybe require that, especially for, those times of year where we have a big heavy snow and we break a bunch of branches and stuff like that, require that twice a year included, we set up, 6 places around the city where we can drop off branches and yard waste in excess, even comparatively to the normal drop-off facility. Just an idea.
Mhm.
Member Kawanabe?
Yeah, and I think this falls in line with my prior suggestion as well. But if we can just figure out what our baseline is and then put that into the requirements, and then everything else could be adds or subtracts, right, as additional options. I like the idea of both Maria and Christine's options. So I think it would be something that we'd have to vote as far as the compost goes, because I would be willing to do the compost as well. That being said, I think what would it hurt to say that Inglewood has a preferred provider for composting, that maybe we could talk to Christine's vendor and say, get a discount, a mass discount, and say, look, we're going to list you as our preferred vendor on our website for this, so that we would get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, or even just offer composting, like work a deal with that company and have
Yep.
them provide it if they can do it
Mhm.
better than everyone else.
Exactly.
As an option on the utility bill.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea as well. Good call, Carson.
But as far as yard waste, I'm going to speak up on that again. The current service level is that both of the big providers take yard waste without extra fees every week when you have it. And I know that that's probably not going to the most ideal place. It's probably ending up in the landfill, but there's frequent need for people to do that. You don't always get to have that happen at the right time in the fall or the right time in the spring. And it's not something that fits in my car. And, I would like to see yard waste included in waste, and then also have the spring and fall where you can put it out if you can do it at the right time, so that it goes to the more environmentally appropriate place. But we do enforce people not having branches over the sidewalks, and branches break off, and they don't break off to schedule, and you have to deal with that stuff. So I think it should, if we're gonna force everyone into a single provider, that should be a part of the normal service. That's my opinion, since that's being discussed. Member Hubka?
Yeah, I have to agree. Right now I pay $30 a month, and I've got a 96-gallon barrel. And as long as I tie up my branches, and I can get them either in that, I can even put them in an extra whole barrel, and they'll pick them up. So unless we get this monthly fee down to $5 or $10 a month, again, the other people are going to not want to go with this service.
I agree. Member Borman?
Sorry, I just forgot to put down my hand.
Member Brinker?
I had seen that some other cities, I think I noticed it with North Glen, offered one place where their citizens could go drop off yard waste. I think it was a parks facility. I got the impression that was city run, not a waste hauler specific thing. I don't know that would be feasible for Inglewood. I just want to mention how I'd seen other cities do it.
Mhm.
Just from my own perspective, yard waste is, and like it sounds like is, Member Hubka said as well, for me, it's bundled, tied up, big ass branches, big bunches of branches that wouldn't fit in my car. And I'm sure I'm not alone on that. And compost drop-offs does seem pretty reasonable though. Like I would do, if it wasn't very expensive and I could drop off compost, I mean, compost is going to be a bag that would fit in anyone's trunk. That's a smaller thing than yard waste. So I think drop off compost as an option would be pretty cool too.
Yeah, I agree. Can I clarify?
Mm-hmm.
As you were saying, Carson, sometimes people will want to just put it out with their trash, knowing that it won't go to the most ideal place. And if the providers currently offer that, it's reasonable to hope or expect that they would continue to offer that and not give us a reduction in service. But some people may want to take their yard waste to a place where it would go to beneficial use, and that's where they could drop it off someplace in the city, and maybe only some people would do that. But that's kind of like the old days of recycling, where that's how we got it going, is to those who are especially committed to take it someplace.
Thanks for clarifying, Member Brinker. That makes total sense to me. And if I could fit it, I would take it. I appreciate that. Someone else had their hand up? Did you have something to say?
That was me. She said exactly what I was going to say.
Cool. Agreed. And then I wanted to ask, on this drop-off recycling facility, was there actually a request for that?
Yeah, it came up at the one of the meetings. There was a gentleman who, I think they do it in Lakewood right now. And he was from Lakewood and suggested that as an option in lieu of providing it at the curb.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, personally, I have far more recycling than trash, and that would be a nightmare to have to put that nasty stuff in my car.
Yeah, I was trying to be open to all ideas, so.
Yeah.
Well,
Please
the city
continue.
does it twice a year anyway, don't they? There's the Christmas tree recycle program, which I have dragged clear across about 2 blocks with a trail of tinsel behind me one year. And
needles, I'm sure.
It was hilarious. You could tell where I've been. But, and then we have a yard cleanup. I mean, I think we can continue with the drop off with like two events, like you said, the events where we just collect it all.
Okay.
For recycling or composting. And well, not the compost, daily compost. I meant the trees and the materials and stuff like that.
Yeah, green waste. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so some of the requirements on the contractor was that they had to make a 5-day schedule that was consistent. So once we published that schedule, that you would be serviced every Thursday, and that wouldn't change. That's pretty standard. Weighing each truck before and after unloading so that we have accurate tonnage for each route that they went on, both for garbage and recycling. And then monthly reports on the amount of materials that were collected, as well as a breakdown of the recycling by type of materials. So cardboard versus glass versus plastic, that sort of thing. They would also be required to work on, in conjunction with our communications department, on public information and education. And it was planned that we would do something probably on a quarterly basis. They were required to maintain vehicles in proper working order and clean up any spills or things that blew off the truck immediately. I believe it was Member Brinker who had suggested that maybe we require them to have CNG vehicles versus just, requesting that. So this is all we really required as far as vehicles, would be that they maintained in proper working order. So it's a pretty low bar. Designating a supervisor or one point of contact for us at the city, having a monthly performance meeting with us, responding to customer calls or emails with a live person during normal office hours, and then documenting and tracking customer issues so that we could follow up on those penalty items.
Member Brinker?
Could it I'm wondering, could it be made clear in the RFP that part of our scoring rubric includes such sustainability items like what their trucks are fueled by, and that way it's not a requirement that they be CNG, but they would have a strong incentive to give us the CNG trucks, though I wouldn't specify CNG because we want to allow for electric trucks too as they're coming along.
Yeah.
What's the incentive? How does that work?
If they know that as we're scoring the RFPs.
Oh, I see. For winning the contract.
Yeah, part of how we score them for winning the contract would include elements such as that.
Yeah. All right, any other questions?
I mean, I've said it before, I brought it up, but I really feel like it would be a better customer service experience if you could, if you have an issue, to be able to just submit it through a form on the website and not have to wait around for a live person on a phone call or chat. I mean, to me, that's a nightmare, because when there's a problem, it's usually a bunch of people have the same problem all at once. And, you know, I'd rather just fill out a form and submit it and know that they have to deal with it and get back to me when they can, or, you know, whatever. To me, that's
Sure.
higher quality service than having to wait on the phone.
Okay.
Yeah,
Member Brinker?
yeah. Sorry, I didn't lower my hand, but I agree.
All right. If there's no more questions, then I'm going to move to the, if you're okay with that, Vice Chair, moving to the fees overview.
Yes, please.
All right. So the slide deck looks fairly similar, the greens. So when we talk about fees, and I know this was of interest to a lot of you, so I do want to go over this in detail, but we have basically what we've been talking about was those costs that the contractors provided us. And I'll go through this in detail, but then we also have to look at what's the administrative fee. And I'll show you what those elements are made up of, or what makes up the elements in the administrative fee, as well as the tipping fee. So that's the cost to dispose of the material at the waste site. So that was, well, I'll get into that, but basically that would be the total cost to each household, as if you add up those three costs. So again, this shows that 9604 number. And then I'm taking out, assuming that about 2.5%, which equates to about 240 people, would opt out of the system. Now, again, that's a guess, as if that's too high, too low, just not sure, but I used 9360 in my calculations to get to what these numbers would be. So just for the rationale of how I did this. So this shows I did list the names here as well. So on the left, and all of these will be waste management, and the right is Republic Services. So you can see there, this is the pay as you throw, that option 1 is for 32 gallons, 32 gallon, 64 gallon versus 96 gallon. The prices would be $15.45 and versus $15.80, and that's that base program. So it's the weekly garbage, bi-weekly plus the container, then a bi-weekly recycling, as well as those pickups for those large item pickup events. And you can see here that Waste Management was doing that for a price. Republic didn't even give the price. They just said that they would have these roll-off events, but they didn't even give a price there. So really we have to almost asterisk this, that would go higher, because essentially they don't provide a cost for this item. So while that looks close, we'd have to dig into this more. Then you can see here for the 64 gallon, it's the same thing for Republic, but it goes up by about $2 exactly. And then just $1, let's see, $1.90, it goes up for the 96 gallons. Then the option 2, which was the 96 gallons for both the garbage and the recycling. Again, weekly pickup of garbage, bi-weekly pickup of recycling, and then the bulky large item pickups 2 times per year comes to $18.90 versus $18.55. So if we go back just for a minute, Waste Management was at $19.35 and $19.80 for Republic, and that drops down slightly by about, what's that, 45 cents for each to go with just the 96 gallons for both. So there's a little bit of cost savings there, but not a whole lot. Then they again, these were the additional costs. So having an additional 96 gallon container, if you wanted to have that, let's say you needed 2 garbage cans because you had such a large family, that would cost you $11 per month, or an additional recycling container is slightly higher at $11.45 for Waste Management, $7.45 for Republic. changing out the containers. These are kind of small dollar amounts or, you know, occasional things. But then if you did have an additional bag, we would provide stickers, which you'd have to pay for at an additional cost. So let's say you did have a bag of green waste, or just you had a lot of garbage that week that couldn't fit in your container, you'd pay to have that sticker put on it, and then they dispose of it. So you can see Republic is significantly higher here. There is a charge, which again, we might be able to offset somehow, but door to curb services for the elderly, or if you just wanted somebody to do that, $15 per month versus $10. And then city waste and recycling collection, we would, of course, the city would pay for this. This would not be worked back into the bills of the property owners, but we thought it'd be, again, much more efficient to have the same contractor pick up our waste and recycling as the homeowners. And again, you can see Republic didn't even provide a price for that. For these add-on items, for the subscription compost collection, so this would be a 64 gallons. So you can see their waste management, it would be $30 per month, and they're requiring $300 at a minimum, but much lower for Republic Services, but a much higher $2,500 minimum. So if you recall,
not
we were
dollar,
at
you mean number.
Oh, excuse me, go ahead.
Well, you said dollar, but you mean 300 participants.
300 people or households.
2,500, yeah, units.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, and so if you remember, we're looking at about 9,300 accounts. 2,500 is more than even 25%. So would we be able to achieve that level of participation for compost for an additional $16 per month? Might be pretty darn hard to do that. Subscription yard waste collection, again, it's $30 per household, 300 households minimum for waste management, and then $12 per household per month with a 2,500 household minimum for Republic. The neighborhood yard waste events, this was again on top of those two items per year, but if we had a neighborhood yard waste event, this was $185 per haul, depending on how many, basically they would drop off those big 10-yard dumpsters, and then as many as they picked up, it would be $185.29 per those containers, depending on how many we filled. And again, it was, they didn't really give a price per event, but it's $275 for Republic per that roll off or that large container, and $100 more if it's involving just compost. Because again, they have to bring that to a special site.
Maria, on the subscription yard waste collection, that's specifically where it does go to some recycling place?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Yep, and then finally was that drop-off facility. So you can see Waste Management did provide a price there of about $12. And so because they're giving us a credit of $7.45, so we're paying about, so instead of that recycling cost that we had in the base program up here of $5.75, they're actually giving us a credit of $7.45 on the $17 cost. So it cost us $11.90 additional per month to have that drop-off recycling facility. So it really doesn't make sense if we're paying more than we're paying, you know, at the curb to have this drop-off recycling facility. And Republic, again, didn't even propose anything. So I'll stop there. That's the base prices from the contractors. Any questions on that at this point?
I have one question just on yard waste, since it wasn't really directly addressed in the RFP about the yard waste to, you know, landfill option that both of these currently provide without any extra fees. Would that just automatically still be an option? I mean, obviously we wouldn't want to depend on automatically, but it really hasn't been addressed, right?
Well, so I don't think they care what you put in your container. So the real element is that you can't have anything beyond the container. So whether it's extra trash or yard waste or whatever. So let's say, using your example of the bundle of
Right, bundled
branches,
branches on the side.
you'd have to put that in the container for them to take it, or you'd have to put the sticker on that. So if we went to under a new system where they also picked up, let's say, anything on the side of the trash can, then it would be more labor intensive because they're actually having to get out of the truck, not only move the container around, but then also having to physically lift that bag or container of branches and put it in the truck. But that's something certainly we could address as a base element or an add-on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just right.
But
Okay.
yeah, in your system, if you have unlimited essentially right now, which is yard waste or any other garbage, somebody else just mentioned that if they put out a bag or something, it gets picked up. That's wonderful. But that's
I mean,
called
that's been my
basically,
experience for 20 years with
yeah,
4
that's-
different providers. They've always taken everything and I've
mhm.
never been charged an extra $1.
Yeah, so that's what would be called unlimited service, that essentially you could put up reasonably, 1 to 2 bags out every week in addition to whatever is in your container.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then I'll move on to the administrative fee. So I know there's a lot of numbers here, but I wanted to give you the detail. So we would have, what we're proposing is that we'd hire staff-wise a program coordinator, I'm at the bottom here, full-time, a full-time billing specialist and admin to answer phone calls, respond to questions, help with the billing, that sort of thing as a full-time, and then having a part-time customer liaison code enforcement person. Now, I don't know for sure if that code enforcement person is needed. That's something that we could debate, but I anticipate that there could be a lot of phone calls, a lot of things for people to go out, and just double check where they're now more aware of what the requirements are. And so they're going to call into code enforcement, who already sees a large number of calls and have to respond to those questions in some manner. So I'm being conservative and putting in a part-time person to address that. We can certainly debate that, and then how would we respond to those calls otherwise? And maybe that tapers off after time, I'm not sure, but that's the 210,500 is what I put in up here for salaries. They would need that code enforcement person would need a vehicle, probably to be shared with the program coordinator. So there's costs in there spread over 5 years for that. Then the communications development, printing and mailing. So that's what I didn't, while the contractor has to help with the material development, the communications, we would actually send it out. So those prices are included in here for the printing and the mailing. And I'm assuming $4,500 per quarter. Again, we could go less than that potentially, but I'm starting with 1 piece per quarter being mailed. And so what that equates to is $24.55 per household per year, which comes down to $2.05 per household per month. Does that make sense?
What is the expectation for the mailing? You said how quarterly mailings? What would be in that?
It's so when I was working with the program in Commerce City, we would do this quarterly. So the first quarter of the year, we would send out kind of like the Englewood Citizen newsletter or a magazine that had multiple pages and just included all the information on recycling, your schedule, what could or couldn't be thrown away, could or could not be recycled, that sort of thing. And then the following 3 quarters, we would do more like a postcard that was, oh, reminder, don't throw plastic bags in the recycling. They gum up the system. More educational pieces than anything.
Remember Brinker?
Could that be combined with the Englewood Citizen, either as a supplement or special couple pages each time, or in the bill that's sent out to save on mailing costs?
Yeah, the Englewood Citizen magazine is certainly a good idea, like an insert or 3 or 4 pages in there. I think that's a great idea. Again, I'm trying to be conservative here. We can always scale this back, but then there is an additional cost. We've looked into this before, but to do an insert in the utility billing, there is a small cost, mostly because of obviously the printing, but also then it raises the price of the overall weight of the envelope. So there is a slightly higher mailing cost, and it's very limited to the amount of text you can put on there. But those are options.
Yeah, just to relate an example, I'm on the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee, and we include as little as a quarter a page and as much as a full page communications in those Inglewood Citizen magazines pretty regularly, communications, that it does seem like that'd be a reasonable place as well. Member Brown?
I would just like to ask the question on these salaries that you're just estimating. I understand that of $210,500. Where's that money coming from?
So that was worked. So that would be worked back into the fees that would be charged to each household.
That's the $2.05 per household per month.
Don't you think that's, I don't know, to me those salaries seem pretty high, but maybe not for a city position.
Yeah, so I was using a comparable. I did talk with our HR department. We obviously don't have a garbage program coordinator position, but I used a different type of program, sort of like a program coordinator, as a baseline.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Member
And
Brinker?
those include the benefits too, right? That's not the take-home pay for that person. That's why it looks higher than you would expect. That's the total.
Yeah, it says
cost
salary,
to
benefits,
Inglewood.
and taxes.
I wanted to mention that, Marcy, you were saying in a previous meeting about how pinching pennies really makes a difference to some families. And Maria, I really appreciate that you did this as conservative as possible, so we wouldn't be hit later on with higher than expected costs. And I'd be interested to see if we could reduce it maybe 50 cents, because 50 cents could make a big difference both for households and for when we're trying to compare this to current rates from providers.
And I'm curious, Maria, did you create like a list of responsibilities, tasks? Like, how did you come up with these roles, and what all is there really enough need for people paid at this level for 2 full-time positions for this? If the trash company that wins the bid is responsible for customer communication, et cetera?
No, that's a good question. I think I'm basing this, so I have talked to the utility billing group. They do feel that they already are getting a lot of phone calls and that they could not absorb this without an additional person. And then the other positions where I've worked, where there's been garbage programs provided in-house, we have had a full-time coordinator position, but we have not created specifically the duties or the job description related to that, but they would be responsible for the overall program.
Thank you.
I think the real question is, do we need the extra code enforcement person or not? And could that program coordinator maybe be like a, like a super part-time, like 30 hours per week? Maybe we could get to that, but that's just been my experience. Is it's been a full-time person in just other communities I've worked in.
Thank you. Member Quantabay?
Do we also build in a support system here as well for those that need it? I totally get it that we need to provide a support system for those that can't afford this. Say we increase this to $2.15 for a majority of those groups and then take that additional 10 cents or whatever it is. Do we know what percentage might need or request financial support?
Yeah, interestingly, we're going through that right now. We've been planning and are currently raising our stormwater rates, our sanitary sewer rates, and our water rates based on a study of each of those program areas. And we're just now developing a program for low income families. And there's very specific criteria that they're developing for the water, sewer, and stormwater that we could build upon and use those same criteria within this program as well. And that's, you're essentially right, is that people, the overages, they're charged slightly more so that we can give back or adjust for those low income families who meet those eligibility requirements.
I think that'd be great. And then we could just include that in the educational piece, right? To get public support as well.
Member Brown?
Maria, does that mean, you know, we all know what's coming on the hike rates on our water bill, but does that mean that if you are on a fixed income, like a lot of seniors are, that we get a discount? Or am I hearing that wrong? And
No,
also with the garbage fee, am I hearing that correctly?
You are. So we haven't completely rolled it out yet, but the intent we've been talking about with council was that there would be a low income program for water, sewer, and stormwater, and that there'd be a process that you could apply for. So if, for example, if you meet those income levels, that you would be eligible for that program and therefore receive a discount. And
Thank
so
you.
what we could propose as a group would be doing something similar with the garbage if we were ever to move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this section? And just to clarify, the opt-out as currently proposed then would be the 205?
Yeah, that's what I'm proposing. Everybody would still pay that 205.
Go ahead, Member Brown.
Yeah, I'm sorry again, but Maria, why do people have to pay that 205? I mean, I know other members are fine with it, but I'm just not. I mean, we're not. I mean, what is that 205 for us? What are we getting for that 205 if we're not into this one trash hauler and we decide to opt out? Why do we have to pay anything to the city if we're not opting in on this trash hauler? I mean, I don't understand about that at all.
And again, that's something that the committee can propose to council one way or the other. But the idea is that we're still sending out those mailings, we're still developing those materials, as well as having to administer that household, if you will, whether you opt in or opt out. There's still some staff time associated with managing that you're opting out, essentially, and having to follow up on that, check your alternate bills, that sort of thing. We may still get code enforcement questions. And so that was the idea, is that because you're still essentially participating in the program in terms of that overall greater good, that you would still pay a small fee. But again, that's
But I mean, the reason why we're opting out, or if I were to opt out, or my neighbor to opt out, you know, we are also paying, I'm sure, an administrative fee, say, to whatever company we want to go with. So we're actually paying a double administrative fee. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because we'd still have to administer your bill or your household that you're opting out. So again, that could either be, if we didn't have, you know, opt-out homes or households paying for that, then the rest of the program would need to absorb those costs.
Member Brinker? Oh, sorry. Did you have more, Member Brown?
No, I'm fine.
Okay,
I'm fine.
Member Brinker?
I would strongly disagree with the assertion that people that opt out aren't getting anything still. I think they're getting less wear and tear on the roads, which ultimately leads to lower taxes for all of us. They're getting cleaner air, which means lower healthcare bills, especially for seniors. They're getting safer roads because we have less trucks on them. They're getting less noisy trucks on the road. They're getting all of those benefits if this program goes forward, regardless of if they're opted in or opted out. I do still like the idea, though, that was suggested to either offer a discounted rate or exemptions for low income and seniors with fixed income.
Thank you. Member Borman?
Yeah, I just wanted to say too that, you know, there's been a lot of talk on Nextdoor. I know about the alleyways and stuff like that and how often they get beat up. And I think one of the biggest things that us doing by doing the single hauler is going to be minimizing that trauma essentially to the alleyways. And so I think that that is some of the benefit that the whole entire city will get, whether you're involved in this or not. And then that way, we're not having to raise fees on our taxes to cover alley maintenance. We're, you know, it might actually drive down the overall cost, because I'm sure the overall cost per year to maintain an alleyway is much higher, especially for the entire city.
Thank you. On alleyware, just one thought. As far as I know, there's only one provider still doing alley service for anyone new. I think there may be some remaining providers that are doing alley service besides Waste Management for people who were in earlier, but that means that in most cases, I think there's really only one company providing alley service right now. So the change to how much alley traffic there is may not be as much as we've potentially discussed. It could even be increased in some cases if everyone's getting it on the street and then it becomes available in the alley. Did you have more, Member Borman?
Sure, we have Waste Connections offering in the alley, I believe, right? And Waste
No, they
Management.
don't.
They do for me. Maybe you were saying for existing customers, they still do, but they definitely pick up ours.
Yeah, as of a year ago, they wouldn't for new customers.
Okay, gotcha.
Did you have something else? Oh,
No,
no.
sorry.
Okay, no problem. Well, based on time, I'm not, let's see, should we go any further with this? Maybe we need to wrap this up and get through the final parts of this, and we'll have to pick up next time because we still have to figure out a next time. Member or Chair Ward is still not on. But we are scheduled to end at 8:15, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, unless people want to vote to extend this longer, but I don't want to spring that on people. Not everybody can change their schedule like that. So if someone wants to make a motion for that, we could vote on it to continue.
How many slides are left, Maria?
Let's see.
We have a big discussion on penalties. I think we're going to want to take a long time to talk about.
I agree.
Yeah, that's the page for. Yeah, and then we have a big bunch of questions at the end too. So I would make a motion that we adjourn and pick this up where we left off at our next meeting. How's that?
Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, so we're voting in favor of, I'll still hit the final parts of this, but we'll stop the new business section where we're at and pick that up next time. And then we'll move on to Chairperson's choice. That's what we're voting on. So please raise your hands for aye on that. All right, that is unanimous. Everyone votes to stop new business now, pick it up next time. Chairperson's choice. Does anyone have anything? Or, well, Chairperson, yeah, that's I guess that's Stephen or but so he's not here. I Chairperson, I'm not even sure who that is. Is that the chair?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you in this case.
Right. In this case, I don't have anything. So we'll move on to committee members' choice. Does anyone have anything?
Did Cheryl have any questions that came in by email?
I don't
I
see.
did not get any emails.
Thank you. So no, we didn't. So nobody else has anything? Okay, then we'll do it
Matt-
Chair Ward
Matt-
style, and I will call it adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Oh,
Okay.
Wait, Matt,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No,
Member
no,
Adams?
no, you're fine. And I'm fine adjourning. Just one question that just occurred to me with the fees. Should we assume any kind of cost of living increases for staff over time, over the course of 5 years? It doesn't need to be addressed right now. I just wanted to note that as a question.
Or 10 years.
Yeah. Good point, Matt, and I will take that into consideration. I think one of the things I want to do is look at, lay that out. So assuming a 3% increase for the contractors' rates, then would we increase something, for salaries, that sort of thing? And then what would be the total cost after the end of the 5 years for folks? So, and Chair Green, do you want to talk about the next meeting as well? before you
Yeah.
adjourn?
Well, let's, Member Hubka, did you have something too? You've got your hand raised.
oops, sorry. No, I don't have
Okay.
anything.
As far as next meeting, I'm not sure where we stand with scheduling next meetings. We're doing twice a month now, but we don't have a regular schedule yet. Is that correct?
Well, I believe everybody could make it on 2 weeks from today. So that'd be November 9th.
Okay.
We're proposing as the next meeting, I believe.
Let's just get hands. Who can attend November 9th? Looks like that's everybody. Yeah. Okay. So we're confirmed everyone can make November 9th. All right. Thank you, everyone. We're adjourned.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you.
Good
Thanks,
night.
Carson. Night all.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Good night.